friends, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to be unboxing the November 2021 Sketchbox. I am not a subscriber to this box. I did not get it in November. I got it this month because I saw what was in it and I wanted it. So I know what's in it, but maybe you don't. You could have looked it up before the video and you probably saw it on the thumbnail, but let's just pretend there's a mystery, okay? Just pretend with me. Come along. Ooh, look. Unknown contents. So yeah, I saw what was in this box and decided I wanted it. Here's the little menu. It is a Kuretake Watercolor box. It also has a couple of pens, pencils. Comes with this neat little plein air watercolor card. The artist's name will be in the description below. And I got the basic box, which is $25, as opposed to the premium, which is $35. Because I just wanted this little palette to play with and see how it works. I've always wanted to try these paints. It comes with this gray mixed media paper, which is very smooth. It's kind of more like a Bristol, and I kind of am confused about why that's in here with watercolor stuff, but we're going to try to use it anyway. Comes with a little Sketchbox sticker. And let's get this off the screen, and I will show you the smaller things that came in the box. There are three, so it starts with this Acryllograph pen, which is a type of paint ink, acrylic paint ink. It comes with a Kuretake Zig waterbrush that doesn't have a cap because that is the cap. It is inside, which is something I haven't seen before. It does on that little yellow sticker say you can't really take this to travel if there is water in it because it will leak out. I'll show you later. And then there is this B pencil from Koh-i-Noor. And as you can see, I put the little sticker on there because I thought it would look cute and I didn't know what else to do with it. And we're gonna try to make this mixed media paper work, but I also grabbed my watercolor sketchbook. That is Arteza 100% cotton watercolor paper because I want to see how these paints work on watercolor paper, not mixed media paper. So we're gonna do both side by side. I'm only gonna swatch the pencil and the pen in the little gray one. So B lead is a little softer than I'm used to, and I believe is waterproof. This pen took a lot more pumping to activate than I am showing here, but now that it is activated, it's not super hard to get it running. Just the first pump session was like 5 minutes. So you can get really thin lines with this, and you can get really thick lines with this, which is nice. I did notice the opacity of the ink is a little lower than my Posca pen. And also it is water soluble, so it behaves like an acrylic paint watered down when you do that, which is pretty neat. I've been wanting to try this brand of acrylic paint pen for a while, so I was excited to see that there was one in this box because I didn't want to buy a whole set. So normally I write the color names or pigment information on my swatches when I do watercolor. On this one I didn't. I just kept the layout in the same orientation as everything is in the palette, so I know which one is which. Because the little swatch card they give me on the back here isn't in the same orientation, so I didn't feel like taking the time to line it up myself. So for an overview, the colors that come in this palette are black, cadmium orange, carmine, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, malachite, olive green, forest green, turquoise blue, indigo, Indian red, and something they call white gold. There is not pigment information on the back of here, but I do believe that Kuretake publishes their pigment information on their website. And the white gold has a pearlescent pigment in it. I can only assume it's mica. I prefer not to use mica and pearlescent pigments because they are mined unethically, but I'll get into that in another video at some time, I think. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and test the waterproofness of this pencil and misspell Kuretake by starting to write Koh-i-Noor, which is the name of the pencil company. So we're gonna test out the opacity and water solubility. So as you can see, the paints are fairly opaque. I believe that is just a property of Gansai paints. And also the pencil does not move. It is a B lead. I think all B leads would behave that way, so that is cool. And they do mix well here. So I want to show you real quick the water brush. They say don't carry it while it's full, and that's why, is because you can get water out of it. So I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of it being a travel brush, but Anyway, today we're going to be painting this manatee from Blue Springs State Park, which I happen to live nearby. Manatees like to go there in the winter, and I love manatees, and I wanted an excuse to talk about manatees for the rest of this video. And the music in the background you're hearing right now is Kevin MacLeod's Music for Manatees. And there is a link in the description to SaveTheManatee.org, a organization that you can donate to save manatees. Also, when the acrylic ink is dry, you can layer paint on top of it, and that's pretty neat. So let's get to drawing this manatee. So something I noticed when I was swatching is that the paint doesn't really sink into this paper, which I suspected would be a problem because it is kind of like a Bristol board texture. It's very smooth. It is not an absorbent paper. I don't really understand the logic of putting this in a watercolor box, other than they seem to have a deal with this company because they put their paper pads at this size in their boxes a lot, I noticed, when I was going back through the archives. So I think this was just a economical decision and not a decision based on what art supplies would work together, which is kind of a shame, but the rest of the supplies work well, so that's fine. And I guess if you're, you know, an artist subscribed to an art subscription box, you probably have at least one other pad of paper on hand at any given time. So it just was kind of disappointing that this particular paper does not like these paints at all. But I make it work as well as I can. I also apologize that the footage is going to be a little bit blurry for the rest of the video. My camera, I think, was struggling with the gray on gray and started zooming out a bit, and it just gets a little fuzzy in a bit here. Unlike manatees, who are not fuzzy at all. Manatees, known as sea cows, are thought to have inspired mermaid legends. I told you I would give you manatee facts, and now you're getting manatee facts. My favorite manatee fact is that they don't have the part of the brain that is responsible for feeling anger and aggression, so manatees are just chilling at all times, and they cannot get mad at you. However, you should never touch manatees because it's illegal and bad for them. Manatees have no natural predators, and it is common to see them just chilling with gators in Florida because the gator's not going to eat the manatee. They're very tough and don't taste very good, I guess. And manatees love everyone, probably. I'm pretty sure they have nothing but love in their hearts for the world. Their only threat is humans, and mostly boats, because humans go too fast in their boats and they hit the manatees, and that's bad for them. So donate at SaveTheManatees.org to save the manatees. Also, global warming is bad for manatees, as it is for everything that is alive. I want to raise awareness about manatees because I moved to Florida and I met manatees and I fell in love instantly. My other favorite manatee fact is that they come up for air every 5 minutes, but when they're napping, they can hold their breath for up to 20 minutes. And their body automatically just rises back to the surface so they can take a breath of air without having to wake up. Now you might be wondering what time of day manatees like to nap the most. Manatees are very active in the morning, but at noon every day, they fall to the bottom of their little rivers and deltas and bays and oceans, and they just go straight down like a rock and start napping, which is also what I do every day at noon. So I feel a real kinship to these beautiful animals. Oh, here, life hack, just keep a fan nearby and use that to dry your paint faster because you're impatient like me and you don't want to wait for your paint to dry. And it took a really long time to dry on this paper because, as I said, this paper sucks for watercolor. See, I brought it back to the art supplies eventually. So you've paid the manatee tax, but I'm probably going to keep talking about manatees at least a little bit later in this video. So another thing I noticed with these paints and this paper, I think again this was more a paper issue, is that these paints dry shifted a lot in color, I think because the paper wasn't absorbing the pigment at all, and that is conjecture. I don't know if that's a thing that happens, but that's based on my intuition and how the paint was behaving. I had to go over a lot of these shadow areas like 14 times to get the color to show up. Okay, not 14, don't go back and count all of the times I layered, but I had to do a lot of layering just to get the colors to show up at all. And most of my watercolor paints do dry shift to a degree, but I think the paper was really fighting me on this, so that was frustrating to work with. I also noticed that when you're putting this Acryllograph ink onto watercolor or slightly wet paper, it does not come as opaque as it normally would, which makes sense. It's a water-soluble ink. But I also noticed just in general, it's not as opaque as like a gel ink pen. Like I normally use a Signo Uniball white gel pen, and this is a less opaque ink than that gel ink, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I like the water solubility of it because I used it to make these little highlights and stuff, and it's a more versatile tool than the gel ink is. But I would not use it the way I would normally use my gel pens for like anime style highlights and graphic stuff like that. I think it's just better suited to more subtle effects. You could use it for those things, don't get me wrong. I just really liked how the ink worked in conjunction with water. So that is my thoughts on that. I probably won't go back and buy the other Acryllograph pens. I have other acrylic paint pens that I'm happy with and that are a little easier to work with than those. That's not to say it's a bad art supply, it's just not one that I find particularly appealing. And also they're kind of expensive compared to other acrylic paint pens. They're about on par with Posca pricing, but I have a set from like Ohuhu of paint pens that I'm perfectly happy with that work just fine for what I need, which is basically nothing. I did find it kind of taking the place of, I see a lot of artists who use watercolor that keep a tube of gouache on hand or like a white gel pen to do more opaque effects with. So I think it will be useful for that in the future. I'm happy I have this white pen. And I think this art supply is more geared towards journalers in general, the Acryllograph pens, just in their marketing, but that is a perfectly fine use of the supply. If you do bullet journaling, I bet those would be really fun to use. And here I am again trying to darken up my blacks because no matter how many washes I went over with this black paint, it just would not stay dark. So that was very frustrating. I'm doing another layer on the manatee in the foreground. And at this point I grabbed the pencil that came with the set to try to darken the shadows with that, which didn't really work because it was about the same shade that I had already gotten the paint to. So I'm gonna have to try this on proper watercolor paper, on non-toned paper, and see if I'm having the same issues with the transparency and dry shifting that I had here. And normally it wouldn't be as much of a problem in general because I can use other art supplies. I tried to keep myself limited to the supplies that came in the box for this particular field test. So I stayed away from like my black ink pen that I keep in my pencil case, which I normally could have just used in the back, and that's also waterproof, so as soon as it dried it would have stayed there permanently. But, you know, we live and we learn. I promised at least one more discussion of manatees, and I know you're all waiting for it, so I just wanted you to know that at savethemanatee.org, you can also adopt a manatee symbolically. Not really, he doesn't come to your house. Here is my finished manatee, by the way, and you can read their little profiles and learn all about their lives, and it's great. So, if you like this video, please leave me a like, because one like equals one hug for a manatee spiritually, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.